G'day, my name is Jetta Doroshenko, and this is the Prayer Project Podcast, episode 11. I'm here with my good friend Ian Alexander. How are you today?
It's another beautiful day to be here to chat about all of the prayers, possibilities, and play today.
Awesome, dude. Thank you for being here. So today, I want to talk about maybe a controversial topic, but it had to come up sooner or later. The emotional charge that people have to the word prayer and kind of what it means to people in the greater scheme of society and just a whole bunch of things. It's a complicated topic. Do you want to share some ideas on that?
Well, I kind of want to ask you, what prayer is to you so we can kind of get a fix on it to move from it. So, Jetta, what is prayer to you?
Okay. Good question. Love that question. So I would say, for me, at its essence, prayer is a spiritual technology. So if I had to break it down, I would say logically, objectively, it seems to show up everywhere. It's almost this thing that doesn't matter if you're from the East or the West. In all of these cultures, religions, rituals, you see people praying all the time for all kinds of things. And so for me, that to me says there's something there, and a lot of powerful communities, a lot of big groups of people feel this gravity towards it, and it's almost undeniable in its usage. So I would say it's almost something that transcends religion and perceptions, and for me is just seen as a spiritual technology, a way to get what you want, however you want to do it. I've heard Greg Braden talk about the act of manifestation, and you have to think it, and then you have to speak it, and then you have to act on it, and that's how we bring things into this reality, right? So for me, spiritual technology.
So identifying prayer as a spiritual technology is something that I really appreciate, because it really creates it and makes it more of a accessible place. Because when you look at prayer as a spiritual technology, it must create results, right? Any technology you have, whether it be your cell phone or a microwave or the wheel, it's got to work for you. And if that particular phone or that particular microwave isn't working for you, or that particular wheel happens to be square, you have to find a new way. And prayer seems to be a technology that has popped up all over the world in the same kind of way. And for me, prayer is almost an affirmation and a identification of the divine. And to say that this one thing shows up over and over again, and this technology is relevant. And when you humble yourself before a greater force and ask for help and ask for guidance, it's amazing how, when done in humility and devotion and reverence, you get answers. And when a technology is used and you get answers, regardless of what entity you set your intentions on, whatever name it's called, this intention is the same, to say, I'm going to humble myself and ask for support. Now, whether that's to some greater power, which I think that's that relevant, that idea of the force, it binds us, crosses through the universe,
Yeah.
or it's simply completely biohacking, and praying is the same as setting intention, and over again you're repeating what you desire. That's what you're going to see. So prayer for me is a technology, as you say, that's ubiquitous and even proof of God.
I like that analogy. You talk about the technology like the wheel, and if you have a square wheel, it's not going to work, right? That's pretty funny. And even there's you can see, it's like a perspective thing almost. You can see it as a glass half full or a glass half empty. Now that's actually a good segue for the next thing I wanted to talk about. An awesome guy called Masaru Emoto, and his book, The Hidden Messages in Water. And I've always loved these images of his, basically really fast camera shots of crystallized ice in water. And his experiments were basically he experimented with what intentions, what words, what emotions had it, and if they had an effect on the water. And so there are these great pictures of dam water. I think it's in Japan or something like that. And the water is very asymmetrical. There's no like clear defined shape or form to it. It's just kind of like this grotesque looking kind of thing. And then in the next shot, there's the same water that had been prayed on by a Buddhist. And it was just this most beautiful geometrical pattern with all of these beautiful. It's just great. I don't even know how to explain it. It's almost like our logo, the Buddha brought, or something like that.
Spiritual technology is, I feel, reinforced by this, right? Because you say, oh, what you said intention creates forms and defines the shapes within the water in your body. So when you say, okay, well, then that would explain holy water because you pray over it and it becomes relevant. Vampires don't like that. Well, that explains it because the water itself is energetically opposite to what is beneficial to it. And then you look at the spiritual technology of saying, all right, well, if I repeat over and over again a prayer within myself of gratitude, of appreciation, that must assume that your body is forming those crystals and you're vibrating on that frequency. That must increase health, overall well-being. Just the practical biohack of my prayer alters the physiology of the water within my body. And here's what's even more interesting. It might even affect the water of the people that you pray for. So by that intention, when you pray on something, and they've shown that space doesn't really matter in between objects when you think about them. So if you think about an individual and you pray for them, you are rearranging their water molecules in a positive way, whether they like it or not. You know, that I'm going to pray for you whether you like it or not. I'm going to rearrange your molecules in a positive way or not. And then, of course, that's the idea of like, if you can affect people positively, then you can also affect people negatively. And in that awareness, be careful what you send out because it'll come back. Because there's that wonderful idea of water has memory, right? So remember.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about also kind of the content that we consume. Another part of the book is music being played to the water and its reactions to that. And so even from like metal and rock to classical and the Beatles, there's a complete difference in the geometrical symmetry, asymmetry, and just the overall form of it. So it's interesting to think about too, just vibrationally, what we consume can have an effect on our emotional body
and not only that, but what we eat, right? Like, imagine if you prayed before every cigarette. Imagine if you prayed over every drink. Imagine if you prayed over every plant medicine that you're smoking or drinking. And you just set that intention. That would make everything sacred. And there's this wonderful idea that if you perceive and set the idea that everything is sacred, then you yourself must be sacred.
Yeah, it's definitely like that holistic idea, right? That you can influence your reality just from your intention.
And there's that idea that you're 100% responsible for your reality. So if you think your thoughts create essentially the magnetic tool that you're cruising around on, then you are magnetized by the vibration of your very body to experience what you experience, which would imply that this makes you responsible for everything happening in your life, positive or negative, which would align with the book expressing you are made in my like and image. And in that you can create and have the experiences you desire, which is the greatest gift you can get.
I can't remember where I saw this exactly, but it may have been in Emoto's work as well. But there was also experiments done with food where like there's rice in a jar and one says hate and one says love, and one will grow mold faster than the other.
Do you know what was fascinating though? Do you know which one grew mold or which one died the fastest?
Oh, I can make an educated
The one that was ignored.
Oh.
There had 3 of them. The one that was positive attention did the best. The one that had negative attention was the second best. But the one that was ignored completely, that's the one that withered the fastest. So it's interesting. Negative attention or attention at all can keep you coming back, but to not focus on something is to let it wither and die, which also might be beneficial for any relationships that you want to let go of.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like even the word emotion, energy in motion, right? So whether it's like your negative emotions or positive emotions, that's still in the flow. And then there's stagnant energy, which potentially for me is like probably the scariest thing, the thing that I don't want to neglect. I want to put intention on that and see what's going on there, because
yeah, it's the idea of being ignored, right? To positive, negative, but just to be ignored at all. And if you want to let go of something, ignore it, right? If you have a negative thought form, pray on it, replace that thought form. If you have a negative person, pray on it, replace that negative thought form. You know, if you're eating badly, like replace the negative thought form. Maybe your chocolate bar might turn into a banana.
Yeah.
Through prayer.
So I wanted to share a little bit about Emoto's work, and basically he is known as a alternative medicine dude and pseudoscientist, and a lot of his work, especially from the book The Hidden Messages in Water, hasn't been received well by the peer-reviewed science community, and his experiments haven't been recreated in the same way. So there's a bit of discrepancy around there between the legitimacy of all of these observations that he made. Although, now let's talk about a peer-reviewed scientific study that was done in 1988 by, excuse my pronunciation, Rene Poeca, something like that.
Rebecca Picohe. Bless her.
And so basically there was, I like to call it the robot chicken experiment, where basically there's this robot that is a random number generator, and it's like a coin flip machine, and it'll turn left or right based on that. So it'll do like a million calculations and basically end up at 50-50% on the outcomes. And so they had this arena, they put the robot in there, and it kind of just like did its whole thing like a pool cleaner. You watch it and it kind of just goes around the whole pool and like does this whole bit. So like what they did was they took day-old chicks and had them imprint on the robot that was their mother. So there was this biological, intentional, probably another word there, something kinetic, psychokinetic connection that was made there. So what they did was they let the chicks imprint, and they took the chicks and put them in a cage in one corner of the arena. And so every time after that, the robot that was, circuited to be designed to be a random number generator was every time turning towards the chicks.
So why do you think that was?
Well, it's interesting to think about why that would be, because it doesn't technically make sense. But I imagine what the results suggest is that our intentions have an effect on the electrical currents, the electricity moving through those circuits in a way that, at least when I heard that, I was pretty shocked. I was like, whoa, maybe I should be more grateful towards my phone and my technology and my algorithms.
Absolutely, because I think gratitude is a vibration. So for instance, in my opinion, you're a genius music producer and you understand sound and you understand frequency. So when they say, talking about our friend Dr. Emoto, he didn't replicate it. And that's a whole other dynamic about science and that whole world. But where they do replicate it a lot is those soundboards, right? Where they turn different hertz, and depending on the hertz, they create very definitive shapes.
Yes.
So when you speak a certain vibration of love, that's a certain hertz that comes in and creates a certain vibration. So sound is prayer is sound, and when they turn these frequencies, they're very specific shapes that are created by those sounds. So if the sound vibrating will create these sand shapes, that's a pretty definitive ideal that, of course, our sound would form these water shapes, which are far more malleable to sound than sand is. So when you look at these different ideas of these chicks chirping away at this machine being like, Mom, 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 the energy of love, of appreciation, of focus takes this machine and must affect it. And then it also makes you think, if that's what kind of energy affects a machine from a chicken, imagine the energy a child to a mom, or more importantly, a mom to a child, or a parent to a child, the way they think about them or to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most powerful tools that I've seen when it comes to releasing, letting go, and moving through pain with others is to bless them and to wish them the very best, to send them the highest possible vibration blessings and see them in their highest possible good and mean it. Because if you can do that, you've forgiven them. And that's a gift to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So these vibrations allow us to transmit energy and emotions. And these are definitive ideas of mind your thoughts. Every thought is a prayer. And this is the science behind it.
Mm. Yeah, it's an interesting thought. It's interesting to think about. Another point that I wanted to bring up is basically all conscious, minus a few exceptions, all conscious beings on this earth that have spines, so the invertebrates are a little bit different, but pretty much everything with a spine has a pineal gland. And it's interesting to think about that all the beings on the planet have this mystical gland that we don't like fully understand, other than like,
which is an interesting question, because like, why don't we fully understand it? Why is it kept mysterious? Why aren't taxes taught in school? You know what I mean? Like, it's just these questions of like,
why isn't nutrition taught in school?
Exactly.
You know,
how come it's a box, now it's a triangle, now you're lying to me? Wait, I don't understand.
Let's not get started on sexual education in schools.
God bless. That was traumatizing. I remember ninth grade back. These are all the things that'll happen to you that are horrible. And I'm like, I am 13 years old, guys.
Yeah.
Maybe we do something else.
in Australia, there was this van that came around. I forget what it was called. It was a van
to get the kids,
and they had a whole bunch of plastic anatomy. And the guide for the whole thing wasn't sexual harassment panda. It was this weird giraffe wearing clothes.
Sexual harassment giraffe. Jordy the giraffe from Toys R Us is in charge of sexual harassment for kids. Like, why is the giraffe from Toys R Us teaching us about sex, Mick? Well, Toys R Us went out of business and Geoff hit some hard times. Now she's teaching about the kids. Now she's teaching kids about sex. And she has to yell because she's very tall.
Yeah, I mean, that was my experience. Get into this van and learn about sex with the giraffe.
Man, that sounds like
we got candy.
Like it sounds like some like, wait a minute. Anyway, it really defines those ideas around the programming and the effect of, the prayer. Why are you resistant? Oh, I won't pray. Ooh, look into that. And then what I like to say is anything you're resistant to, look into it and ask, why am I resistant to it? Because you had that lovely quote of, I'm no longer resistant to anything because there's been so many conspiracies, and God bless the conspiracies, but they're batting 1,000 right now. You know what I mean? They just keep like, after a while, you're like, maybe we should listen. They seem to be right a lot. Yeah. So it's coming up to say, all right, well, I'm open-minded to the idea that I don't know, because when that cup is full, you can't take any more in. Only an empty cup can receive new knowledge and consider it. And then if you're a genius like you, fully 100% believe it, and then take a step back and say, you know what? Maybe that's not for me.
Yeah, it's I've been interested in conspiracy since I was 18. Let's say conspiracies since I was 18.
Facts.
And make conspiracies great again.
Working right now.
So like, I just feel like I don't believe anything anymore. It's just my mind becomes open to that potential. That's kind of a good place.
I'm open to that idea.
It's helped me find some peace in a lot of those things.
And to be okay with being wrong, because that's something else that I really like about prayer, where, if you've got a problem with prayer, maybe you have a problem with being wrong. If you have a problem with prayer, maybe you have a problem with change. If you have a problem with prayer, maybe you have some elements within yourself that are resistant to looking at some things that would improve. Because if you're always looking outside yourself for things to change, you're always going to be looking. There's that wonderful Rumi quote. When I was young, I wanted to change the world. And I grew older and wiser and realized that all I could change was myself.
Wise words.
Yeah, Rumi's pretty rad. I like it.
I just wanted to finish this thought about the pineal gland. So the pineal gland's function, mostly what we understand, is it produces melatonin in your body, which is basically triggered by your circadian rhythm. So your pineal gland takes in light through your eye, and that tells you, okay, now it's time to go to sleep. Now it's time to wake up, and now you're in your rhythm. It tells you where to go and what to do and when to do it. So all beings on the earth have, I mean, it seems obvious to break down, but all beings on the earth have this timer or antenna receptor for the
It's
sun.
it's an antenna.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it is.
To gain information from the sun about when to wake up, when to feel good, when to feel right. So it's just interesting to think about that, in some way we are all connected in like...
Well, and if you look at the mythology of the pine cone and the pineal gland, the Pope, pineal gland, Dionysus, pineal gland. You look at the ancient Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, all over that world, there's an attachment to an understanding of this being a gateway. Look at Dr. Joe Dispenza. His meditations are focused around activating the pineal gland.
Yeah.
When you're talking about DMT and the releases DMT and DMT's connection to this God molecule and the connection between the pineal gland and its God molecule possibilities, and as Dr. Joe Dispenza, or depending on your plant medicine predilections, create DMT to be able to transcend and connect to that frequency, that dimension that is real, but beyond our scope, but without that particular tool.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. Well, I want to thank everyone for listening to the podcast today. Please let us know in the comments if you liked us talking about a little bit of taboo science, a little bit about what we think about prayer, a little bit about conspiracies. And thanks for listening. This has been the Prayer Podcast, the Prayer Project Podcast, episode 11. Have a great day.
Jetta, would you finish with us with a prayer for us?
Oh, sure. Yes, sir. Dear Lord, please hear these prayers. May we be surrounded by temperance, providence, reverence, and justice in all of our actions. Amen.
Amen. Great podcast.